Summer. Summer Bock, I am delighted to finally have a real conversation with you because I've been reading your materials and I am blown away by your background, like super smarty pants. And you don't hear about people who are actually real herbalists these days. And yet we're sitting around talking about antimicrobials all the time and all of these herbs, but you are really an expert. So thank you so much for joining us on our SIBO SOS Summit.
You're welcome. I'm very excited to be here. You know, I probably get at least one email every single day about SIBO. And on some days it's, dozens.
It seems to be in the water, even though that's not how you get SIBO, but yeah, I'm not surprised at all. When you're working with people and you're advising people, what should they think about in terms of combining what herbalists do all the time, underlying cause, and the problem that underlying cause is causing? Explain how an herbalist works with that.
Oh, totally. So, the way that I look at it and the way I was trained to look at it is that you need to look at the symptoms instead of looking at these diagnoses. I think in Western medicine, you're trained to name every single condition as if it's got like boundaries and like a little fence around it and, an exact description. And that's not how our body works. I mean, everything is literally connected, and all the fluids and all of the hormones are, they're all communicating. Everything is connected and communicating within your body. And so it's not neat and tidy like that. So we look at symptoms and we look at the root cause, and we deal with both because you want to help relieve somebody's immediate symptoms, and herbs are really powerful at doing that. But you also want to make sure that you're dealing with what's underneath that. Why are they experiencing these symptoms? Because if you ignore that, it literally is the Band-Aid effect.
A lot of people to treat SIBO use neem, and they use berberine, and they use some combinations, and they use allicin. And when you think about SIBO, do you think about, is that your go-to protocol, or do you have some other herbs that you work with?
I do use some of those herbs. It depends on the person and some of the other symptoms that they're showing. So I don't have this exact protocol for every single SIBO person. I'm like, here's my, repertoire of herbs that I will deal with this person. But like, do they have yeast issues as well? Do they have leaky gut symptoms? Do they have, there's so many other things I'm looking at in the context of their overall digestive health and their overall, like imbalance in their microbiome. So, if somebody is dealing with SIBO, honestly, there's a couple things that I look at first before I even start doing herbal protocol. I ask them first, how often are you going to the bathroom? Most people, it's not as frequent as it should be. And things are not very digested, and obviously they're like feeling discomfort while they eat and things like that. But we work on strengthening the digestion first. And if I have to go towards like betaine HCl to do something like that to help get the pH of the stomach more acidic, to start killing off organisms right then and there, I find that that's a really important step. And I also use herbal bitters for that. So we start with herbal bitters. If somebody needs something stronger, we'll go straight for the HCl. But for me, it's like, look at the pH of the stomach. Let's get that more acidic. Let's kill off any organisms coming in through the food, because people with SIBO cannot handle having more organisms coming in. They can't, their body, it can't handle it. You've reached your maximum ability to fight off organisms within the digestive tract at this point. Don't bring more in. And I also have them lower the amount of foods that they're eating that contain microorganisms. So it's, I love fermented foods. So we lower the fermented foods because there's a lot of organisms and microorganisms in fermented foods. But also, honestly, I lower some other things. And this might be a little bit controversial for some people, but I lower the meat intake and fish intake, shellfish, like things that have a lot of potential to grow microorganisms and hold a high microbial load. We decrease that just to help their body not to fight off as much. So we're making it easy. And that's a really big step. And then the second major thing I do with them, first and foremost, before anything else, is I have them figure out their stress. And I'm telling you, I've worked with SIBO people who have done, 2 rounds of antibiotics within the past year. I've worked with people who have done 2 rounds of herbal antimicrobials or 3 rounds, and they're fine when they're on. I've worked with people who've done like 7 rounds of the antimicrobials where they're like, I have to keep doing this because I'm only fine when I'm on it. And they don't know what to do. They're just at this place where like, I can't stop taking this stuff. And those are the people that we just go straight for the stress stuff. Like, why are you so stressed out? What is going on? And that's where I move more into the coaching part of the work that I do. But I have 2 cases where I've worked with one person in 24 hours by doing the stress stuff. Their symptoms were gone and have stayed gone. I still am in touch with them. They've stayed gone because they were literally eating up their gut with their stress. And another person that took them about a week, same thing. People underestimate the power of the chemicals of your neurotransmitters and your hormones and the effect that they have on your whole system. I have a textbook, I can see it right over here on my bookshelf, called Microbial Endocrinology. And it's one of my favorite texts on this topic of thinking about the way that microbes literally communicate to our entire system and vice versa. It's a 2-way communication, and you have got to choose what you're telling these microbes. And if that's the baseline, I start everybody there before we do anything else.
So is it about the communication? Well, I'm already answering my own question in my head, but it's also about the moving into the parasympathetic nervous system, which is that more relaxed state. So how does moving us into that more relaxed state, that less stressed state, impact the gut? Is it just like you're resting and digesting, so your body's doing its own thing already because it's just an improved environment for your belly and your guts? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the state of I call it rest and restore. When you're in the parasympathetic nervous system, when that's dominant, you're in a state of healing when you're in that place. And your body is able to go through and take care of the business that it needs to take care of, janitorial work. That's when it's able to do all the things it's supposed to do. When you're in fight or flight, when you're sympathetic dominant, which most people are all the time. I mean, most people, we live in just a time in the world where people are living in such high stress, and we do things all day that continue to stress us out. When you're in sympathetic dominance, you are pressing the pause button on every single healing job in your body. All those jobs go, you know what? Nope, you're fired today. Go home. You're gonna go home early because all the firefighters have showed up and they need to take care of this fire. And that's how it works. It literally is that's the building on fire. And so the problem with that state is that those chemicals that you're producing, the adrenaline, the epinephrine, the norepinephrine, all the stuff that dumps in that moment, cortisol is a big one. Those all communicate to the bacteria as well. And they recognize those neurotransmitters and those hormones as a stress response too. And what do they react to? They have their own reaction to these chemicals, these stress chemicals. And for them, that reaction can be, it depends on the situation, depends on the pH and the nutrients. There's a lot of factors. It depends on if there's a bunch of antimicrobials present. I mean, there's all sorts of factors. Let's say there's a bunch of antimicrobials present and these certain bacteria are dying off, and then all these stress hormones kick in. Guess what that triggers these microorganisms to do? Reproduce like crazy. Reproduce. You're dying. Your clan is dying off. Don't let them die off, And so doing this work in a state of stress is so counterproductive. It's unbelievable.
Okay. So what are we going to do to reduce our stress? What do you have your clients do?
So there's emotional stress is a big one. So I teach people emotional detox. I teach them how to process their emotions, get them out, get them through, don't hold them in. And we know that emotions affect the gut in a major way. I mean, just think about what happens when you get really afraid. How many people have to go to the bathroom when they get really afraid? When I get really afraid, there's a couple situations where I've had bad experiences. One of them's at altitude, where when I start going up too high, too fast, if I'm going skiing or whatever, I feel it. I feel the little bit of anxiety creeps up. I feel my heart kind of increasing. in rate. And I'm like, oh, and then I feel all peristalsis increases. And we get to the top of the mountain to go skiing. First thing I have to do, I have to go to the bathroom. And that is it. That's your response. Your gut is responding to your emotional state, and that's happening all the time. And if you experience emotions and you hold them in and you just don't do anything with it, that's a biggie. So cleaning up emotions, but learning how to do it in a way where you're processing them in a healthy way. Secondly, this one is, I feel like this one is obvious. This is on the lines of eat your vegetables. Clean your house.
No one's talked about that yet, but I agree with you 100%.
Clean your house, get it spotless, get it organized, handle your projects, throw away stuff that you're never going to deal with. Do not have piles. Organize your closet, organize everything down. And I'm serious, because that's going to take away stress on such a big level. Every time you walk by an unfinished project, it is traumatizing your brain.
Okay, I love you so much already. I think I saw it on Dr. Oz, which was, and if it's not him that came up with this, I think someone else did. It's called NUTS, Nattering Unfinished Tasks. Unfinished is one word. Nattering unfinished tasks. It makes you nuts. It does. It's like constantly visually stimulating. And I know my brain kicks off like this whole shame cascade, which cannot be good for me.
It's not good for anyone. And, you want to take this to an extreme level. Think of the TV show Hoarders. So people who are hoarding, it's a severe mental, state that you're, and it's usually, when you look at their stories, they've been homeless, they've experienced extreme poverty, extreme loss, things that like most people that are not in that state cannot even relate to. And they can't let go of these things. And so you have to kind of examine your own life. Be honest. Where are you hoarding? Where are the things that you're not letting go of? A lot of the stuff in your physical space is a representation of your like mental and emotional state and your ability to believe that you can handle it. So my overall way of dealing with stress is just handle your life. Handle it. Like, say no to stuff, schedule yourself to where you have self-care time. Don't, put yourself very much first in terms of taking care of your body. Treat your body like as a temple and put that first. Like, take the time to sit down and like do your daily, prayers or whatever it is that you're doing for your temple. Like, that comes first. Once that's done, you can take care of other people. And, I don't want people taking care of people from a very empty place, or, from a place where they actually are the ones that need the care, which in the case of SIBO, most people are the ones that need the care. This is such a big part of what I do. And you wouldn't believe how much you have to work with people to kind of break down these pieces into steps, because you've been walking by that same, broken key rack in your house for 10 years. You don't even know that, you don't even notice it's broken consciously, but subconsciously you do. And so it's just handling your life to where when you walk in, you relax. Your home is a place where you have nothing to do except take care of yourself, nourish yourself, hang out with your family. And anything other than that is a complete distraction and making it harder for you to get better.
So my home office that I'm staring at, I should probably put some walls up, so for when I'm not working, I don't get visually stimulated about my to-do list in there. The more organized that stuff is, the better. It really frees up you to be completely in the moment and creative and really relaxed. I've had to learn how to reprogram my stress response. I struggled with all kinds of illnesses throughout my life. And when I started training as an herbalist, we did an elimination diet / cleanse. And that's when I really first realized how sick I was. I didn't know till that moment, honestly, had no idea. I grew up on Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, Mountain Dew, cigarettes. That's how I freaking grew up. And when I did this cleanse, I felt like a wool blanket had been taken out of my brain. And I looked around, everything was crystal clear. I felt calm and not anxious, maybe for the first time in my life. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is how normal people feel. And I felt like preaching from the rooftops. I was like, people have got to learn that you can feel better, and you don't know it until you've experienced it. And that whole experience for me of that one moment changed everything. And it really led me to the work that I do now. It's what makes me so passionate about this.
to just realize that the first 21 years of my life, I had no idea that I wasn't well at all. No clue. And so from that point forward, I've just really worked towards, pushing the boundaries of what it means to be healthy, and challenging the society's ideal of what's possible for us in terms of health. But I noticed throughout this that, I was stuck in a stress response that was incredibly damaging for my system. And this is something that was ingrained from probably as a baby. And I've had to I still work on it, because for me, it was so strong that the littlest thing would trip up a stress response, and it would it was almost like PTSD for stress. I'm not kidding. The littlest thing would trigger some anxiety. And then all of a sudden I was just like spinning, and like going through all these bad negative patterns. And it just led to a really stressed out person full of adrenaline and full of cortisol, and, turned me into somebody. It's like, I wasn't my full self, because I was always managing on some level, like stay calm, breathe. Maybe you should count your breaths. Maybe, oh my gosh, are you dying? Is everything okay? Oh, it's just like this nonstop. And so training myself to be relaxed has been a really big piece in my own personal healing journey. And I think that's when we talk about stress, people get overwhelmed, but what's the opposite of that? It's being relaxed and learning how to truly just sit in your body, feel comfortable, feel relaxed about anything that's happening, and competent that you're going to be okay in every moment. People that are on a healing journey who have some big issues, I'm telling you, that's not always the easiest thing to do.
Oh, I'm glad you said that, because you look so perfect and you look like you have your act together. And I'm like, wow, she's saying that it's hard, but she doesn't look like it's ever been hard. So you're exactly right, because I'm a yoga teacher. I've had, a lot of health challenges too. And so I meditate and I, really work on having a balanced life. It's so difficult. And that's why I think they call it a practice. It is not something that it's a one and done. It's such a constant, it's weird to be calm about being vigilant, but when you can finally get there, it's extremely rewarding. And also, if you don't feel well, it's really hard, as you know, to have the energy to do all that. Even cleaning up, that's so much. I get decision fatigue about that pile of papers that needs to be decided about. And for me, I either would have a buddy come over and I would help her, because I can help her make decisions about her stuff all day, and she could help me do it because there was no emotion for her. And then at some point I actually hired a professional organizer. And well, not everyone can do that. Maybe you can figure out a barter or something like that on, Craigslist or however. But once she came over, it was a real turning point for me, because I realized that even in glimpses, there was a different way to live.
That's awesome that you did that. I had friends come over and I literally just made them sit there with me, sit here in my office with me while I figure out what to do with this stuff that's everywhere.
It's really uncomfortable to do that kind of mental work, especially if you don't feel well. And it's extremely emotional. So I love that you had just friends come over and just keep you company, right? Wasn't that comforting?
I couldn't have done it by myself. I would never have done it. It would not have gotten done.
Did they help you, or did they just hang out with you while you did it?
I had one friend who was super organized. His place was spotless, and I made him come over and tell me what to do. And he walked in my office and he goes, I want you to take 60% of the stuff in here, put it in boxes, and just stick it in your garage, and then invite me back over here to tell you what to do. I was like, okay.
A little tough love.
He came back over and he was like, 30% more needs to get out of here before I'm going to come back and look.
Okay.
So, I picked somebody who I felt like had it figured out in their life. And then I had other friends come over and just be emotional support. They literally, your job is to sit here for 1 hour. I'll come do whatever you want for an hour, but you're going to sit here for an hour and you're going to tell me you're doing great. Keep going. You're going to get through this. You have to finish this. You're going to have a clean office when you're done. Do not give up. Then that was their script. And that's what it took. And I really didn't have my stuff together at that point in my life. And it really took all of this work to get there. It's a combination of everything. I love that we're talking about this too. It doesn't always come up, but if I really had to talk about some of the most impactful things that I did on my healing journey, these are big rocks.
They are, and they are underrated. And I'm really glad we're talking about it too, because there's a lot of shame around it. And a lot of us, like, we've been looking at the piles for a really long time. We'll move on to another topic, but it's really important. And what I've noticed, or what I noticed, like with my mom, who was very healthy and then very sick, when she started to not feel well is when the piles started. And it was just, she didn't have enough emotional energy to take care of herself, her family, and make those decisions. And I wish that I had known then what I know now, because I would have been able to help her so much. I was also, we had a great relationship, but I would have had even more compassion for her. And I just, that's one of those little tiny life regrets. I wish I could have helped her in that way.
Yeah.
It's, anyway, today's a new day, and we can all do what we need to do, or at least attempt it. And even just writing the list of the stuff, and there are so many more resources. Like, we didn't have the internet when my mom was going through that, but to even go to technique. There are so many people that have sat around and thought about ways to do this. Not even just the ancient yogis, namaste, but, you know, and how to reduce your stress and how to be a healthier everything. But people that have sat around and thought, what's the best way to file? What's the best way to organize your cabinets? Hello, Pinterest. I mean, go for it. Spend some time there. And even if you do a couple of things a week, it really does have impact.
Huge, huge impact.
And it doesn't mean that you need to like live the life of tidying up, you know, that whole approach, because that can be very severe, but just those little things. Okay, off our soapboxes about that, and onto our soapboxes about other things.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the fermentation and how we hear about it, we read about it all over the place. Fermentation, you talked about it a little bit. Is it good for us? We have SIBO. We want to reduce the load. When would be an appropriate time to introduce fermented foods, other than just after you maybe get a negative SIBO test, or you're feeling like you're doing a little bit better? Is there a perfect time to start? And do we go slow, or do we just like dive in?
Yeah, I mean, so the way that I do it with folks, so I generally tell people to wait till they don't have any more symptoms. You know, I even usually say at least 4 weeks with 0 symptoms before they start introducing those foods back. I find that that's really important, because people need time to make sure that really, so when I look at SIBO, I also see leaky gut, because usually people, when they have SIBO, their intestines are inflamed. There's a very likely strong possibility that they're dealing with intestinal permeability on a more regular basis than a healthy person, so for extended periods of time. And what I've noticed that happens with people who are struggling with that, if they bring in the fermented foods, they're going to bring in histamine. They're bringing in all these other things that can now cause a response in the body. And I've just seen, I don't know if it's the histamine that causes an increased intestinal permeability, but it seems like histamine itself might actually cause increased intestinal permeability. So there's a lot of histamine in fermented foods. And as much as I love them, and I think they're fantastic, I watch people get amazing results in their bodies when they eat fermented foods. But when then SIBO's on the table, or like a really bad case of leaky gut, where you see things like real histamine responses, you know, you have wheezing, you have runny eyes, you have bloodshot eyes, you have a tendency to get hives. There might be some asthma, reactions. Some people just see it as headaches or brain fog or tension around their head. Some people, it goes all the way to eczema and psoriasis, or maybe it looks like candida symptoms. But all of these to me are the similar connecting, thread is histamine. And so I see a lot of histamine issues with people who struggle with SIBO. And so I'm super curious about that connection. I'm still asking a lot of questions to people. I'm still like uncovering as much as I can about this. Because I think when you're dealing with histamine, you have to look at it in terms of like sealing and healing the leaky gut situation, reducing histamine that's coming in, and making sure that you're not creating more triggers, more responses. Just like in the gut, if you're dealing with SIBO, you have all these microorganisms living in your small intestine, really where they shouldn't be living. And as they produce their endotoxins, those endotoxins are irritating that intestinal lining. Who knows what they're doing? According to some of the research, I'm sure you've heard this about like gluten. Have you heard about zonulin?
Yeah, but act like we haven't. Go ahead.
Okay, so when you eat gluten, your body produces zonulin on your intestinal cells, and it actually, the zonulin kind of puffs up the intestinal cells. And according to some of the research I've read, this is supposed to wash away bacteria, but this is an actual response for like washing away things that shouldn't be on the intestinal wall. So the zonulin is produced and it's supposed to wash away, but if you're getting it produced all the time, over time that becomes this intestinal permeability, these like these like not tight junctions, as they say. And so for people with SIBO, I just wonder how much of that the endotoxins being created by these organisms are causing that as well. So that becomes a big issue, and you see this so much with people. So this is, again, where I can look at this from the herbalist standpoint. Like, I can't always tie this nice little bow around SIBO. I'm like, now we have this histamine component to look at for a lot of people. We have some leaky gut issues to look at for folks as well. And so, I have to say, like, I have two main approaches when it comes to dealing with SIBO in terms of dietary recommendations. And so I start with the stuff I mentioned earlier. Those are the first two steps. And then I go into the third step, which is dietary. And I'm like, okay, first and foremost, we want to add in foods that we know that you can digest well. And so I have two styles. One is a low histamine, low oxalate diet. And I have found for some SIBO folks, low histamine, low oxalate diet is actually completely acceptable, very beneficial. They're able to seal and heal the gut because there's not all this histamine triggering the intestinal permeability. And then the other option is a low microbe diet, which is a vegan diet, not bringing in anything that has microbes basically on it. Very, very low microbe foods. Vegetables have microbes on them, but compared to like meat or cheese or dairy products, it's minimal. So those are kind of my two approaches. And I just pick, it just depends on the person. It depends on how deficient they are. If they're very excessive, like if they have a lot of excess, if they're very overweight or really red complexion, I'm probably going to go a little bit more towards the low microbe, like vegan style, diet. And this is just for a period of time. I don't think people should be vegan long-term. That's just my opinion. And maybe it's because I work with a lot of people with gut health issues and low assimilation issues. But that's the one approach for that more excessive style body type. And then the people that are a little bit more on the deficient side of things will go towards doing the low histamine, low oxalate, but there is meat included on this. But the interesting thing about that side of it, the low oxalate, low histamine, is they're not eating kale. They're not eating spinach. They're not eating parsley. They're not eating pretty much any greens except for some salad greens and zucchini. And, they're not getting their fermented foods. So people freak out for a minute. But when you look at that diet, it actually looks very similar to a little bit more of a traditional diet that our ancestors would have eaten. It's not one of these like superfood, super crazy diets. Like, I have been there. I have drank my fair share of like goji berry kale smoothies with raw cacao and coconut butter and all of that. Like, I have done every single superfood out there. And in the end, because I also have dealt with the histamine issues in my own life, and I had to go for 2 months. I did the low microbe diet, and I had to go for 2 months with no fermented foods whatsoever. And here I am, like, I owned a sauerkraut company for a period of time. I started it, and here I am, like, I'm making sauerkraut in massive quantities, and I'm not eating it. It felt very hypocritical in a way, and it felt, really sad in another way, because I loved that stuff, but I couldn't eat it during that time. And I did that diet for 2 months, and it made all the difference in the world. I've run tons of people through it at this point, and it has made such a big difference for people. But like I said, I pick one or the other, just kind of depending on where they're at. There's some other levels too. Some people just can't go without meat protein, and that's when we'll often choose the other diet.
What's an oxalate? People don't talk that much about oxalates.
An oxalate is an alkaloid that is found in vegetables. It's found in herbs. And an oxalate is, from my understanding, it's really designed to keep the plant safe, to keep animals from eating it. And, there's always going to be like trace amounts of oxalates or histamines or things like that you're going to eat in food, but there's just some that have a much higher source. And here's the thing is we live in a culture where when I was looking at my diet and going, okay, low histamine foods, need to eat low histamine foods, and, looking at oxalates, low oxalate foods, my diet was pretty much a full histamine, full oxalate diet, So oxalates would be mostly in like beets, beet greens, spinach. I almost wonder if oxalates have a sour flavor. I'm not totally sure, but I feel like there's that little bite that I notice in a lot of oxalate foods that you just you're like, yeah. Like you couldn't just munch it. You're not like, it's meant to kind of keep you in check with that vegetable.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Do you think it's sour or do you think it's bitter?
I think it would be sour, but that's just based on, I know the flavor. I feel like I know the flavor of oxalates. When I think of there's a plant called oxalis, and it's filled with oxalates, and it's an herb. I mean, most people don't really use it. You can use it in cooking a little bit, but oxalates, they build up in the kidneys over time. They're not good for you in large quantities, but in small quantities throughout your life, it's not a big deal. But for some people with arthritis or autoimmune conditions, they can start to see joint pain appear. They can start to see other issues that can stem from the oxalates.
So I was talking to Donna Gates about this too. And she was saying, like, if you put, like you were saying, into a smoothie, your kale, your spinach, your nut butter, your basic, even carrots, if you were juicing or whatever, like you're like really building this huge oxalate load. Oh, and like the cacao nubs and all that. So nibs, whatever. What are some other substitute foods that we can eat that, we're all sitting around here thinking, oh, I'm going to have a kale chip. Oh, it's going to be delicious. Oh, it's going to be so good for me. Or you're suffering through it because maybe that's not a taste you like. What can we do instead?
I mean, instead, I think you just want to keep it a little bit simpler. I think we've gone a little bit too judgmental with our food. We're like, oh, there's healthy vegetables and not healthy vegetables. I literally think we've made that distinction at this point in time. And for some reason, there's all these vegetables that are just not as healthy as kale. Why is kale more healthy than another vegetable? We need a lot of different vegetables. We need variety. But, my favorites, especially in this scenario, I mean, you have to make sure you're digesting it well. But like yellow squash, zucchini, I think are fantastic. And you can make zucchini chips. They're amazing. Yes to carrots in small quantities. I do think lettuces work, especially if they're like more the heirloom variety, like just like softer, not the real roughage style lettuce. I have people do sweet potatoes in small quantities. It just depends on whether they can handle it. Squashes, things like that. Those are probably celery, cucumber. Those are some biggies, and you're getting everything you need when you're eating those kinds of vegetables, So I think I tend to have people do a little bit more cooking of their food because of the work that we're doing around the gut. We're looking at an impaired digestive system. So going more towards that raw diet, I think so many people are still like, maybe raw is what I need to do. I did the raw diet. I lost so much weight. We lost so much weight because you basically were on a calorie restriction diet, for this period of time because you got so full or you got tired of chewing, but, when you're saying I'm only going to eat raw, it eliminates a ton of foods. And I have found that is not the right solution for my gut people. It's just not, so I say, definitely focus on cooking foods, make soups instead of smoothies. And, you can use a little bit of a bone broth base if your histamine levels are low enough. If you're eating a low enough histamine diet, you can bring in some avocado. You can bring in some bone broth over here. You can bring in the good fats where you need them. You can bring in the high mineral broths when you need it, as long as you're not just constantly pushing the histamine in, pushing those oxalates in. I mean, a high histamine diet, just as an example of what I would have been eating, it was like bacon, avocado, chocolate, coffee, almond milk. It was like the entirety of my diet was just like revolving around these super high histamine foods. Taking those out takes a minute. And I honestly think that there's a little bit of a physical addiction for some people to that stimulation. You get really used to the stimulation, the overstimulation of like, oh, histamine, like you're not thinking histamine, you don't know that, but there's this tension, it releases endorphins, it releases adrenaline. I mean, you're feeling all of that when you have a histamine response. super uncomfortable on one level, but when you haven't had one in a while, you're like, give me some freaking chocolate. Like I need my, like, you know, that stimulation essentially that people get addicted to. So, I mean, I do want to bring in one other factor that we haven't really discussed here, if you don't mind. There's this whole component that I haven't talked about, which is low blood sugar. So there's, you know, insulin is a biggie. Insulin is, you know, what drives sugar and glucose into your cells. And that's what even allows you to have energy on a day-to-day, minute-to-minute basis. And for a lot of people that are dealing with SIBO, they are looking at, you know, blood sugar imbalance. They're usually looking at some sort of insulin issues as well. They usually are like what I would say pre-diabetic, you know, where they're not pre-diabetic. They wouldn't show as pre-diabetic on their numbers, but if they were to chart their glucose on a daily basis, like probably 5 times a day for a week, I guarantee you would see some numbers that weren't so pretty. And most of the time, these people are all over the board. They're like 60, 145, 70, you know, they're just like, they are going through a roller coaster of sugar, of blood sugar. And that sets up a very problematic situation for people who are struggling with SIBO, because you're then craving foods, you're craving sugar, you're craving energy, and your body's like, I need this now, I need this for energy. And so you eat it, but if your insulin is too high, you can't even stuff enough of that sugar into the cells. And so you end up eating more frequently than you should, which is super bad for SIBO. You know, so you're eating because you need energy. And so what I've noticed is when people go through paying attention to their blood sugar and get their insulin receptors reset, that makes a very big difference. So learning how to fast for 16 hours a day if you can, eat maybe twice a day and not snack in between. If you can get it to where you can do that and you can reset your insulin receptors, you're not eating high sugar foods at all, no sweeteners, none of that. It takes usually, I don't know, I'd say like so my friend Rita Marie Lascalzo, she teaches a class on how to do this. Love her. But I would say it takes 16 to 21 days to get those insulin receptors to reset so that you can have energy from your glycogen and from your fat cells again, which is a huge important step for SIBO folks. You have to reset your blood sugar and your insulin receptors. You have to, so that you can now just burn energy and not be craving food when you shouldn't be eating, because you need that time in between meals, that fasting time, to reset all of your gut hormones, because your gut hormones are what are going to trigger peristalsis. It's going to trigger all of your organs in your digestive system to work how they're supposed to work. And if you're eating every 2 hours or every 3 hours or every 4 hours even, you are literally not giving your body time to let the gut hormones be produced that need to be produced so that your body can take care of the microbiome throughout your system. I mean, people are kind of setting themselves up in a way for this. So that's a little bit more natural to how people used to eat. And you have to be able to get to that place. And I'll be honest, it sucks. Those first 3 weeks of getting your insulin receptors reset, you're going to sleep, you're going to take naps. You might have to take a vacation to do it. I don't know how people who don't own their own business do this. I really don't. I mean, I was exhausted when I did it. I was exhausted. I took 3 naps a day. 2 of them were 1.5 hour naps every day. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so how exactly did you do it? I mean, and also we need time for the migrating motor complex to work. So that's why, you know, food spacing, everything you're talking about, the peristalsis, but like even below the peristalsis and that migrating motor complex, 4 to 6 hours. You need to like not put any calories in your mouth for those 4 to 6 hours to have it really clear all those microbes out. And so when you did it, which I love the whole combo package you would have if you could do that fasting for that long, other than like wanting to take a vacation and sleeping all the time, what are some practical things that we can do to incorporate that?
I mean, you have to eat a little bit higher fat during that period of time, which can be tricky because most people struggling with digestive issues have like a fat malabsorption issue. So it's tricky when you know that's what's going on to eat fat. But I've noticed that when you're resetting your insulin receptors and when you stop eating high sugar, super high carby food as a way to like get energy hit, what happens is you start to be able to digest the fats easier. I see that across the board. And I don't know exactly, there's some science there that I still need to uncover for sure. But it's really fascinating that you can actually digest fats a lot better once you're not bringing up your blood sugar as high. So definitely make sure you're getting enough fat. I would say the other thing is make sure that you eat enough with each meal. It's okay to eat a little bit bigger meals than you might normally eat during those. For a lot of people, I say 2 meals. If you have to do 3, do 3. But if you can do 2 pretty solid meals and maybe 1 smaller meal that's maybe just like liquid or, you know, a soup or a smoothie or something for that 3rd meal, that's fine. But really try to have a little bit bigger meals that are going to hold you over, and schedule time to take a nap. I would say even after you're done eating, schedule time to nap, you know, and just make it happen. You know, crawl into your desk at work and take a nap if you can. That's part of getting into rest and restore though. When your insulin levels are that high, your cortisol levels are high. Guess what? You can't actually get into a state of rest and restore if your insulin levels are too high. You can't.
So what if you start to feel really hungry? Do you think that that's just the cells needing energy? Like, what do you do? Like, I've had blood sugar drops where I'm like, you know, I mean, I'm like really falling. So what, is it just a transition? You just kind of have to work with it, and maybe you do that little extra beverage right then, and then next time you would have less and less and less, and it goes like that?
Well, so there's a couple things. There's phases to this. So you shouldn't be having low blood sugar dips where it makes you fall out. That is an imbalanced hormonal system, right? So if you're at that point where you're just like, you're falling out and you're not like starving to death, you know what I mean? It means there's an imbalance. So you have to work on the imbalance first. And what you do is you want to test your blood sugar, and you want to just make sure that what you're doing is knowing that when your blood sugar gets too low, that you eat something that's not going to spike it again. So you learn this range. And again, I'm just going to quote them. This is Rita Marie. I mean, she teaches a lot of this insulin piece, but I do think it's super important for people to master this. But she calls it a sweet spot. So you find between this range and this range of your blood sugar, this is a place where you feel good. Anything below that, you feel like crap. And anything above that, you might actually feel anxious or just kind of off. So there's a sweet spot, and you want to find that place, and you find it by checking your blood sugar multiple times a day. And then, so at first, while you're healing your receptors, yeah, your insulin is not totally in check. You know, you're gonna have blood sugar drops, and so your body's gonna want to get food. But the worst that's gonna happen is you could maybe faint. You're not actually gonna die. Just gonna put it out there. You might faint if it really got bad, but you could eat something with fat in it, and in 20 minutes or so, you might, you know, whatever. But even if you eat a little bit of something with fat in it, your body's still gonna recognize, oh, you know what? I think we had some food. I think we're going to be okay. But once you heal that, you're not going to see that spike anymore. And you're not going to see that kind of drop, because your body will immediately switch over to burning glycogen, burning fat as the fuel source. So I think that's really important to notice.
Are you going into ketosis? Is that the word?
It's not that you're not really going into ketosis. You're just going into normal metabolism. You're just getting insulin out of the picture in such a big way. Insulin blocks your ability to burn fat and burn fat as energy. So, you know, yes, you do use some of the fat is turned into ketones. So it's mild, but it's like a normal version of ketosis. You're not in nutritional ketosis, like a full-blown version of it, but you are burning ketones. I mean, that's what your body will convert some of that. But it's just it wouldn't even be considered ketosis if you checked like your blood ketones, it probably would still be under, I would say under 2 millimolars, I believe it is.
What unit of measurement did you just say?
Millimolars. I think that's what it is. Millimolars. Yeah, it says it on the little test.
Okay. Wow. I was like, molars, teeth. Okay. So you're the one who's trained with all that microbiology. I'm just a civilian here, just a SIBO patient trying to help the world. Okay, let's just do a quick scenario here of if you're trying to fast up to 16 hours. I mean, obviously that's like you were saying ideal. Yeah. What time would you eat? Okay. Like, give me a clock here do you skip breakfast?
I would, yeah. I mean, I think it depends on your body type. Some people do it better skipping breakfast or skipping dinner. But a lot of times, like with intermittent fasting is essentially what this is called. You would eat dinner and then you would just skip breakfast, skip lunch, you skip breakfast and then eat lunch and then eat dinner. A lot of people will skip breakfast, which is weird because I'm also, on one hand, for some folks, I'm like, you gotta eat breakfast. It just depends on the person, And if you don't have insulin resistance, I think you should eat breakfast.
There it is.
Yeah. If you have insulin resistance, I think you should skip breakfast. And I think you should not be eating high carbs. It's not about skipping breakfast and then going having a bagel or even like your like latte with, all natural honey and stuff in it. It's like whatever, like, or even that you skip breakfast and then you go eat lunch and then have a snack that's a smoothie at the smoothie bar that's dates and almond butter and bananas and some blueberries. It's like you just ate a full on high sugar carb bomb. I mean, I think I got into a state of like mild insulin resistance literally from drinking smoothies. I really do. I think it was the dates and the bananas, and I do. It was just a lot.
It makes sense. I mean, I can tell you feel like you're like going against the grain with that, but it makes total sense. Who eats that many dates in one sitting?
No.
Right.
Delicious, but
fabulous.
Yeah, it sets you up. So yeah, I'd say skip breakfast is the best way. But if you can't skip breakfast, you just eat you just have some bone broth. Sip on some bone broth. Give yourself something, or maybe like it depends on your situation. If you can handle miso, if you're not dealing with SIBO and things like that, you could drink some miso soup and let that tide you over. Something to give your stomach something to work with. Some protein will help. A little bit of fat.
Yeah, I make you were talking before about, different approaches to getting some nutrition and the oxalates and everything. I make a soup every single day, and it's vegetarian bouillon and those SIBO happy ingredients. And then I just put in different SIBO friendly vegetables and put in some oil, maybe even some garlic infused olive oil. And I just drink that almost like a tea. Even for breakfast, especially if my tummy's upset. And it has been like, I will end up craving that. And it's been such a blessing. It's also a really good way to get that onion taste because you can just put those green parts of the leek leaves in there. Yummy. I know that might not be appealing to somebody, but if you want savory, it's a good way to get savory.
No, it is yummy though, because that's a mineral, like a complete like mineral infusion. And again, I mean, I just go back to digestion. When you're dealing with any digestive issue, there's digestive impairment. On some level, you are having malnourishment of some vitamins, some mineral, probably quite a few, And so, yeah, bringing in like a concentrate like that, where you've broken down the fibers, you've let all of these minerals, like, get into that soup and drink it. Your body's like, yes, thank you. I actually know exactly what to do with this. I can absorb this easily. Thank you for giving me this unencumbered blast of nutrition.
It's very, very soothing. And I used to think, making soup, it's such a procedure. You got to like be in the kitchen all day. And, it's just like before I go to work, I can make it in like 15 minutes. Cause I just like with my smoothies, which I will be rethinking. I cut up the zucchini and a little bit of squash and a little bit of butternut squash and couple of leaves of oxalate rich kale and spinach and a tiny bit of beet, because that is more than that is high FODMAP, but now I'll be re-looking at that, and some carrot and throw in that bouillon, and it's all frozen, fresh frozen. I put it in there, put in the bouillon, let it sit, take a shower. By the time I get back, it's been simmering for a while. And I take the leeks, the green part of the leeks or scallion, put that part also in the freezy bag, and then it's delish.
That's awesome. I
really recommend it. Yeah,
that sounds really good. I bought an Instant Pot, and I'm in love with it. I'm just gonna say, for people who have to be in the kitchen making their own food all the time, it is a godsend.
Okay, now what's an Instant Pot versus like a crock pot, or what is that?
It's a pressure cooker and a crock pot combined into one. And so I can literally chop up vegetables. I put a little bit of salt. I just chop up whatever vegetables I have in the fridge. I usually do like yellow squash, carrot, celery. That's like one of my favorites. It's just so simple. I put in salt. I either put in bone broth or I just don't put any in, and I just turn on the Instant Pot, and in 15 minutes I have soft vegetables. Like delicious. And I love it. I mean, it's seriously, you can make beans and from dry to all the way done, completely soft beans in like 40 minutes. And it's, you know, not that you're gonna be eating beans, but that just makes me happy that you can like make food so fast like that.
Is it, so it's called an Instant Pot or Instapot?
I think they should have called it Instapot because it sounds cooler, but it's Instant Pot.
Okay. Someone probably already had that trademark.
Probably.
Okay, I'm gonna have to research that for sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk about herbals, because you know that's part of the SIBO protocol. You look at the entire person, you look at their symptoms. Do you have any herbs up your sleeve that you recommend for bloating?
Well, generally I think of herbs kind of in two different categories. When we're talking about like the higher up GI. And so I think of the essential oil herbs. So like oregano oil, you know, lemon balm, like all these essential oils that are going to help kill off a certain spectrum of bacteria. And then I think a lot about the like more root antimicrobials, things like that. So those are kind of two approaches that I use, but like for bloating, if we're talking about SIBO and bloating, I'm going to use the antimicrobial herbals with people. And usually at some point, if we go through the first 3 stages and we've like introduced food, you know, they're doing the stress, they've, you know, handled these other pieces, and now they've done the food. Now we're on step 4. That's the antimicrobial phase. That's when we're like, okay, let's bring in something. And so bloating is such a big part of one of the major symptoms I see with folks dealing with this. So yeah, I really love the oregano oil, kind of lemon balm oil combo. And then, yeah, of course, I mean, the berberine. I mean, the berberine is a big one for the other side of things. And I think it's very effective. But here's the thing, in terms of bloating, you know, when you look at also traditional Indian food, there is a lot of different herbs that you use within the cooking of that food that helps naturally with bloating. So, I mean, are you talking about it in terms of SIBO or in terms of just like if somebody's...
No, it's all SIBO all the time for me. No, just SIBO. Yeah, because I mean, you know, those bacteria are feeding off of our food and they are effervescing in our small intestine, and it's leading to all this gas. So even if we, you know, don't have a totally clear SIBO test, to still be able to deal with that symptom. I mean, sometimes people do charcoal, but if you're already constipated because you're hydrogen positive, that's really hard because, you know, that you're already constipated.
Right. Yeah.
I'm
not in love with charcoal. Not in love with charcoal as the option for bloating. I mean, honestly, I'm more likely to do, you know, there's actually, do you mind if I like name drop companies?
I want you to name drop companies, please.
I mean, this is one that people might be familiar with. I don't have like an affiliation with them. It's just, there's, the Candy Bactin AR by Metagenics. I think it's one of the better ones, like for bloating, for like pretty immediate relief. But again, this is the essential oil side of things, right? We're looking at, this one does have oregano oil. It does have lemon balm, and it also has sage and thyme. And I find that one to be incredibly effective for this. And I think it balances people out pretty quick if they've gotten out of balance. But, you know, other than that, you know, there's also some really potent herbs that you wouldn't even think as something that you would reach for. But chamomile tea is a biggie.
Yeah, I think it's high FODMAP, so I think that there's kind of like a love-hate relationship with that. What do you think about peppermint tea?
But why would high FODMAPs matter if you're just doing a infusion? I guess I don't see a flower. I don't see, like, if you're doing an infusion of flowers, where is that coming in?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm going to find the answer to that out.
Yeah, I'm curious because I don't know how chamomile flower tea would cause that, but it does help ease like cramping and bloating pretty darn quick. Catnip tea would be another great one for this. Relaxes peristalsis a little bit, or relaxes like the cramping of it. And then peppermint tea I think is great, but it's tricky because peppermint tea for some people, it seems like it can trigger a histamine release. And some people like it's kind of one of those, it's a tricky one for me. I've seen it work for some people great, and other people I've seen it just kind of cause more problems. Mint is very stimulating.
Yeah. Is it kind of like ginger?
It is. Ginger is like one of those superfoods that I feel like I had my fair share of, and I'm like, okay, there's a time and a place.
Yeah.
Ginger is not one to be overused especially in, gut health land. It's too much.
Well, a lot of people use it as a prokinetic, as one of the main ingredients for one of the most popular herbal prokinetics.
Right.
But I've tried it. If you have any acid reflux or any GERD, and you've got some weird business with your lower esophageal sphincter, it can burn. It can burn so much that, it's a little bit like playing with fire. It can keep you super warm and super happy on occasion, or it can just like scar you.
I mean, it can be caustic, and I don't think that that's an ideal situation for people where they're just like doing shots of ginger on an empty stomach. I actually would never recommend that. And yet people do it all the time. I know people who have developed issues from doing that. So ginger to me, like, doesn't need to be used as a vegetable. It needs to be used as a spice.
I like it. Okay. Yeah. And if it's working, obviously great. Just to be a little cautious about it, because the burn is not supposed to be there. If it's burning, I would imagine that would be, I'm not a doctor, I'm not an herbalist, but I would imagine that might be counterproductive to the prokinetic nature of it. So, fortunately there are a bunch of prokinetics we can look at.
Absolutely. What I think is interesting when you're talking about, like, I'm really thinking about this question about bloating and herbs and things. And I have to say, like, even as an herbalist, my first response is always, okay, what's the food? What happened with the food? Like, the food shouldn't be causing the bloating. I try not to think about, like, and essentially with people who are dealing with SIBO, I want them on a very simplified diet, a very easy to digest diet. If we start adding too many complex layers of herbs and things in, we have too many variables, and honestly, when somebody is dealing with these issues and we start bringing in even like coriander and turmeric and all these spices that you can find in your spice drawer that are all of those have some sort of antimicrobial properties. When you look at Indian food, it's spiced in this way that actually prevents you from getting, various kinds of illnesses from pathogenic bacteria. So if there's two sides of it, these people are so inflamed that adding in these herbs can trigger more of an issue. So I try to stick with the food first. And that's kind of why I go that essential oil route with that one product I recommend, because I don't feel like it triggers on the same level. It's not quite as irritating. It's a little bit more soothing.
Are there any other herbs that we should be thinking about as maybe a tonic or a tonifying type thing? I know we're trying to keep it simple, but is there, like, I feel like everybody should be on or experience once a week or a couple of times a week the following. Do you have anything like that in your arsenal?
I do. I would say that I think everybody needs to become friends with at least one adaptogenic herb. And so I don't think that it's one herb for everyone. And I, as an herbalist, I'm always afraid of being like, here's the one thing, everybody go out and overharvest it and make it go away. But I do think everybody needs to become friends with an adaptogenic herb, which is an herb that's going to help chill out your adrenal glands. It's going to help support and nourish so that you can actually start to practice what it means to be in a state of rest and restore. Because that's the thing, like, I can tell you, you need to be in a state of rest and restore. Can you do it? Like, can you go into that right now? Like, that there's layers to it. You can think you're going into it. You can practice it tonight. You can go spoon with somebody for a little while and get some good, oxytocin and some other chemicals flowing to get you to start to relax. You could go meditate. You could go do a yoga class. But you're still only going to get into a certain state of rest and restore unless this is something that you practice all of the time. So in terms of like, the reason I love adaptogenic herbs is it's going to be part of your training in learning how to actually deeply relax. So, I can name a few favorites. I love holy basil. I think it in extract form, like not just tea. I think tea's okay, but I really like the extract form. Great for lowering cortisol and breaking the cortisol cycle. Really good at helping people feel just like have a break from the stress and feeling crazy. It can also be really good at balancing blood sugar because it's bringing down the cortisol, which helps with the insulin response. I love Hosho Wu. It's one of my favorites. Now, I don't know how FODMAPs tested all of these are, so I'm going to sit here and say these, and we still may need to double check. Just that's the warning, because I don't think of them that way because they're in such small amounts that you take these and usually extracted. So when they're in an extracted form, it's fine, but if you're taking it in the powder form, you know, or some other way, you might want to make sure. So Hosho Wu means like Mr. He's black hair. So that actually translates as, and what that means is they're saying that when he took it, his hair was gray and his hair went back to black. And the reason he did that is because his stress levels went down, because this nourishes the adrenal glands so well. And then my absolute favorite is Schisandra berry. Now, Schisandra berry, you can do the extract of that as well. That one might be questionable in terms of eating the berry itself, but it's the most bizarre tasting thing ever. It's kind of disgusting. I hate to say it. I'm sorry. It's disgusting. Okay. It's so gross. It's the 5-taste herb. And that's the Chinese name for it, which I don't exactly know how to pronounce, means 5-taste herb. Has bitter, salty, sour, sweet, and something else.
Astringent?
You know, I'm missing it. No, it's not astringent, but they're all combined into one. And it's so powerful at helping the body regain like its vital energy.
And how do you eat the berry, or is it like a capsule or a tincture or tea?
You would take a tincture or capsule would be my preference. I have a powder of it, and I will take like 1/8 of a teaspoon or 1/4 of a teaspoon. But it is gross. Okay. But let me just explain this though. I really want to talk about why I still think that's important. It's put it on your tongue and like taste it, and you're like, ugh, you know, and it tastes sour, it tastes bitter, it tastes all these things. And that's causing a response in your digestive system. It's actually training your tongue to go, oh, these are flavors. These are these flavors. Okay. And so now you later eat something slightly sweet. It's going to taste more sweet. You develop an appreciation when you actually have a relationship with herbs that may not be the most, we're so used to delicious tasting fruit and vegetables. They've been, you know, totally, modified genetically, like no joke. I mean that they've been hybridized for decades to become what they are today, to taste the way they do. But actually we're missing out on a lot of flavors that are good for our brain. They're good for our nervous system. There's responses on your tongue when you taste foods like that or herbs like that, that trigger your vagus nerve, which is your largest nerve in your body, triggers your vagus nerve, which has a huge role in your parasympathetic or sympathetic state. And it triggers that. And you can even feel sometimes this shiver down your spine when you taste herbs like this that are gross. And you're like, ugh, and you're making a face and you're like, ugh. That's what I want you to do. I'm serious. That like motion alone of just going, ugh, and you're that little chill in your bone and that little shiver. I mean, that's like a little bit of emotional detox, a little bit of tension release. And it's your nervous system fighting for itself in that moment. Like, here, okay, wait, we have something. We need to do something here. This is giving us some direction that we need to take.
I like it. I like it for toning the vagus nerve, which is of course that ultimate mind-gut connection. They say, gargle vigorously, sing really loud. There's all, the whole gagging thing, just like the tongue depressor. Yeah. So when you're doing that little thing, that's basically, I totally get that as a connect the dot moment, because that's totally that stimulation of the vagus nerve. That makes so much sense and is so interesting. Things that make me go, And what is the name of this berry again? Because is it like, I'm not even going to attempt to say it. Say the name again.
Yeah, Schisandra. It's SCHI Sandra.
Okay. And where can we get that?
You can order it. I order these things online. I love Mountain Rose Herbs. It's one of my favorites. I think they have some of the highest quality herbs. I also am a fan of like Gaia Herbs makes great extracts of these things. And if I have to say for I mentioned holy basil, new chapter makes my favorite holy basil. I mean, hands down, bar none. It's the concentration of it. There's something about it. It is that plant that they're getting, the quality or something. It is potent and very effective.
So you were talking about holy basil as a tea. So is that like Tulsi?
Yeah, Tulsi tea.
Okay.
But I like it better in that extract form. It's powerful. At that moment, it's like, this is what herbal medicine is.
Very cool. Is that why digestive bitters are also effective in helping the digestive system? Because your body's doing that,
Yeah. No, it triggers the vagus nerve right there on the tip of the tongue, and it creates that whole cascade. It literally tells the body food's coming in. Peristalsis increases, like your whole digestive system says, oh, food's coming. Let's move everything down and make room. Let's squirt some bile. Let's squirt some pancreatic enzymes, Yeah. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of bitters. I make my own bitters that I sell to my clients. I have two different kinds. I have one that's called sweet and gentle bitters. So it's more on like for people who have anxiety around eating, it's more to like calm you down. That's the one that has catnip in it, which I think is very effective for like chilling out the digestive system and the nervous system. And then I have one called liver warming bitters that has turmeric and gentian, and that one is like bitter.
You're so happy. You're so like bitter. I'm like going, yuck.
It's like a double dog dare challenge. That's how I feel about bitter. I'm like, it's almost like, you know how people get about spicy? They're like, oh, I can eat spicier than you. That's how I feel about bitter.
Yeah. You're hardcore. Cause like though I have bitters in my kitchen cabinet right now. The wrapper is still on them because I don't know what happened to me when I was a kid, or I don't know what's going on, or maybe it's exactly that I need them, which is probably the case. They are so repulsive to me. Anything bitter is just like queams me out, and I feel like I'm going to throw up.
Interesting.
Something wrong with me? Something's probably wrong with me.
Well, I would say start with something mildly bitter and just see if that works. And you can do, there's some bitters that are slightly sweet, or you can mix them with something that has a sweeter flavor to balance it. But I think it's worth experimenting with. But like, there's also Ayurvedic medicine, right? Where we talk about, pitta and vata and kapha. And, I believe it's pitta that's not supposed to do bitters like total crazy. It can kind of get them a little bit out of balance if they go too crazy with it.
Yeah, too crazy. Like for me, a drop would be too crazy. So I think I should definitely try them. I definitely think I should.
I think you should try them. I think you should try them with the intention of just saying, okay, I'm going to put this in my mouth, and maybe put it with a little water. Put it in a little shot glass of water so that you're diluting it a little bit. Take a sip and just give yourself permission to like express whatever comes out. I mean, literally like move however you want to move. Like just see what comes from that moment and just check in and like let those herbs kind of like send whatever messages they are to your body and see what they say, and just take a chance to hear it and take it from that angle and see what you get.
Truly being an observer.
Absolutely.
An adventurer with my own taste buds. Sorry to turn this about me, everybody, but maybe I'm hoping somebody else can relate to this.
I think totally they can.
When I was little, I would eat dinner over at the neighbor's house sometimes, and their rule was you ate what was on your plate, and they love to serve up green vegetables, high in oxalates, I'm sure. And I really wanted to spend time with my best friend, my little, neighbor. But when I would eat, I would do the, grab the napkin and try to stuff the vegetables in the napkin because they were so repulsive to me. So, I mean, like salivating, I'm like literally sitting at Elizabeth McKennon's dinner table right now, and her mother, Marty, is serving us. This is taking me back to serving us this spinach and like some weird greens. Maybe they were, I don't know what kind of greens they were, like collard greens or something. And I was just like, like feeling sick. So,
yeah.
I'm going to look into that.
Let's check into it a little bit.
Isn't it weird how flavors can take you a place mentally?
Absolutely. Flavors.
Just thinking.
Yeah, no, it's pretty amazing.
Well, you're amazing.
Thank you. So are you. I mean, you're putting on this amazing summit for everybody. This is such a valuable resource.
I really hope people watch it and are helped by it, because I don't want anyone to go through what I went through alone and without the proper information, or just feeling like, I used to feel like, oh, everyone else knows about this, or I'll have to travel across the country, which I ended up doing. and was totally worth it. But I don't want everyone else to have to do that. And then with telemedicine these days, there's so much more available for one-on-one. But I hope the whole summit really helps, at least as a springboard for maybe further exploration, if nothing else, like me trying my bitters. Good girl.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, there was a point in time where I could only eat 30 foods without a reaction. My food allergies were so bad. And so to just know, even just letting people know that, you know, I don't have allergies to any foods anymore.
How long did that take you? Obviously, you were on a very intensive program.
Yeah, I mean, it took me about 8 years to really get there.
That's a good realistic thing for you to say. If somebody has complicated SIBO, especially when you know, it's one thing if you have an acute food poisoning and you get SIBO and bless your heart, you're fixed up after a round of antimicrobials or the antibiotics. But when I was dragging myself to like meet with Allison C. Becker, and I, you know, just intuitively, I would check her website all the time to see if she had an opening, and, you know, she was booked or, you know, things were going on. So she wasn't taking patients at that time. And one day I was just sitting at my computer and I just intuitively felt like, go look now. And so I looked and she had an opening. Oh my gosh. So I got in, and then I booked myself like once a month for the next however long she was making the appointments available. And I mean, I'm glad we didn't videotape those things, because I looked terrible. I mean, the poor woman must have thought that, you know, I don't know what she thought, but we're friends. Finally, now we're friends and we're colleagues in this whole project. But I mean, I was dragging, to say the least. I was like in my bathrobe going, yes, Dr. C. Becker, what should I do? I feel so bad. And, you know, we were trying everything. Look, I just went there too and got lost of what I was going to say.
Well, how long did it take you to get there? Like to
Thank
get
you.
where you
Thank
are?
you. You're a good interviewer.
Thank you.
I said, out of desperation, just like, I can't go on like this. How long is it going to take for me to get better? And part of me was, you know, obviously hoping she was going to go, you know, in about 2 weeks or 30 days. And she just flat out said, it usually takes about 4 years for people with complicated SIBO to be able to handle it and manage it. It wasn't even like, you'll feel great. It was just like, it takes a long time. And that was about 2 years in, and it really was sad in the second, but it was ultimately very liberating to know, okay, you know what? Adjust expectations. Let's pace ourselves here. This is a long bus ride. There are going to be bumps. There are going to be rest stops. There are going to be other people on the bus that you would not like to be sitting next to, whatever it is. But it really did help. So to hear you say 8 years, like, doesn't make me bat an eyelash.
Good. Good. Yeah. I mean, and ultimately, I think my deeper mission is that I just want it to be easy for people to be healthy. I want the easy and convenient choice and the socially acceptable choice to be the one where people are making the healthiest choice. You know, right now people feel like they have to choose between a social life and being healthy. Well, but what about my social life? How am I going to go out drinking with my friends? Like, that's the number one, like, sort of like objection that I hear from people who have to change their diet in order to heal their body. And I'm like, you shouldn't have to choose between your friends and your health, period. It's not even about, are they the wrong friends or not? It's not even like that. It's just, you shouldn't have to make the decision. You love these people. You shouldn't have to make that decision. And I can't wait for the day that people really start to get more and more comfortable and accepting with all of this. But also, I think that takes everybody here watching this and everybody doing this work to feel really confident about the work that you're doing and really accept exactly where you're at and accept that this is perfect. It's exactly what you need to be doing. And it is the right thing to be doing for you. And the right thing isn't the same for everybody, but like really getting the confidence to say, no, thanks, I'll pass on that. Yeah, I still want to hang out with you guys. And the confidence to be able to go out with people and hang out with them and not feel like you have to be like peer pressured into something that they're doing in order to be accepted, that you know you're accepted. Like, that's a big part of this healing journey that many people don't really talk about. And I have to say, like, I don't drink alcohol. I don't like it. You know, I do drink coffee, decaf, cappuccinos. I love them. But, you know, I go in and out with it. Like, not, you know, it's not constant, but I can't handle caffeine. I can't. It's just too much for my system. And I got my genetic testing done, and they said, low caffeine metabolizer. And I was like, that makes a little world of sense. So I cut back on that. So I don't have these like, hey, let's go get coffee or let's go have drinks. But, you know, the way that I hang out with a lot of my friends, we go ride bikes together. Like that's how I hang out with the majority of my girlfriends. We ride bikes together and then we go have dinner afterward, you know, and everybody knows I don't drink and no one really gives a crap about it. And we have, you know, it's just like, that's not what life is about. That's not the basis of your friendship. And I look forward to the point where we actually can have meals centered around like, you know, this kind of food that, you know, where people would understand what people who have SIBO need to eat in a way to have them feel completely accepted and comfortable at a dinner table, and no eye rolling, no, you know, nothing, just complete acceptance. Okay, great. I understand. What do you need? Let's make it happen. Do you want to bring something? How do you want to make this work? We want you here.
Right. And like not have that be the center of the conversation. I haven't had alcohol in decades. And I one day went to reach in the fridge and I was by myself on a Friday night and I reached for this Bartles and James for the young people. It's a wine cooler and they used to come in a cute little 6-pack. And I was like, what am I doing? It's a Friday night. I'm by myself. This is a habit. This is totally a habit. Like I wasn't even thinking. It made me feel sick. My liver always felt bad afterwards. I mean, I was in, you know, very, you know, drinking age, but young. And like, it would instantly make me feel like, literally like I was ill the next day. So why am I doing that? So I just thought to myself in this clarity moment, I will never forget it. What if it's more than a habit? And I said, you know, I should just test to see if how long I can go without drinking. I haven't had any alcohol since.
That's amazing. I can't say my journey was that easy with it, but it definitely, you know, it took me a little while to be like, okay, this is cool, but totally worth it. I just don't have the time or to feel crappy. I don't have time to lose part of a day. I don't feel like I have that time. Like I enjoy this life and I don't want to waste it feeling like I can't function. And I watch people on their hangover days and that's what they do. And I just can't believe that you would want to spend half the day in bed feeling crappy. I'd rather be like, I'm going to spend half the day in bed reading a book because I want to.
Right.
But anyway, I do have to wrap up. I've got to get out of here. I did have a meeting at 4 that I just...
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. You were totally delightful. I really appreciate everything that you're doing for everybody. And we will be connected with you through your website and can't wait to learn more from you. Thank you so much, Summer.
You're welcome. Thanks, Shivan. I'll see you later.